Welcome to a new week here on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Micciche, and I am very blessed this week because I have a guest, Jason Parker. He is the host of Sound Retirement Radio. And I actually reached out to Jason because I love listening to his podcast. It's on the exact same topic of what we cover here on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast. He's a best-selling author. He created the Retirement Calculator. He is the host of Sound Retirement Radio, a popular podcast with more than 1 million downloads. He's also been a frequent guest on ABC, Fox, NBC. He has earned the designation of a retirement income certified professional. Jason is also the president of Parker Financial LLC. They're an independent, fee-only, registered investment advisory firm operating as a fiduciary. I love that. That's exactly what we do. I love fiduciaries. There's not many of them, believe it or not. And so I'm excited because Jason is going to talk about the 3 numbers that you must know to retire with confidence. But before we do that, Jason, I was hoping you could just kind of tell me how you got started with the podcast in the first place.
Ashley, well, thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest on your show. I'm really excited to be here today. The genesis, the origin of the podcast started, I joined the local Chamber of Commerce. And when I joined the Chamber of Commerce, there was a local radio show. And the gentleman that ran that local radio station, he invited me. He did a show where he featured new members of the Chamber of Commerce. And so he said, hey, I'd love to talk about Parker Financial and what you do. And I said, yeah, I'd be happy to be a guest on your radio show. And I have to tell you, Ashley, I was so nervous during that radio interview, that first one. I mean, my voice was cracking and it was really bad. It was only like 6 minutes long, but it seemed like the longest 6 minutes of my life. Totally outside my comfort zone, something I had never done before. But after that radio interview, he said, hey, Jason, we're looking to add a financial host to the radio station. Would you be interested in hosting a 30-minute show once a week on retirement topics? And so that's how I got started. And it started out as a radio show before it became a podcast. Every week I would go into the local radio station and I would ask them for the MP3 file. And then they would give me the MP3 file. So I would just take the radio show that we recorded and I would upload it as a podcast. And so that's how it got started.
So the 6 minutes was terrifying, but you were like, yeah, let's do it. 30 minutes every single week.
And like you're really good at this monologue, getting in there and talking by yourself and just sharing ideas with your listeners. I've been listening to your show, but that was not easy for me. So I started out with this 30-minute block of time that I had to fill up and I had to talk for 30 minutes. It was really, really challenging. Shortly after that, I had a PR firm for the Social Security Administration reach out to us and they said, hey, we've got the Social Security expert. He's the Western Washington Public Affairs Specialist. Would you be interested in having him as a guest on the radio show? And I said, yes, I'd love to talk to somebody instead of me just talking for 30 minutes straight. And so today, I would say the podcast is kind of a mix. I personally prefer when we can bring guests on and I can interview them. I love learning from people and I love learning their perspective. And then some of the shows are just me talking to people, sharing with them what we're learning and things that they should know as they're preparing for retirement.
And for the benefit of our listeners who, at least when they listen to my podcast, they're used to the short form content, but I know that they listen to lots of longer form podcasts. So it's a mix of monologue and interview style, but then about how long are most of your episodes?
That was one of the great things about not doing the radio. So several years ago, I decided to stop doing the radio show and we only do the podcast now. But when we did that radio show, it's like everything was so structured. You know, you had an introduction and then you had to talk for a certain amount of time and then there was a commercial break. And the thing I love about the podcast is I don't have all those limitations and restrictions. I can just talk for as much time as needed to share whatever information I feel is relevant for people. And sometimes that's an hour-long conversation with somebody, and sometimes it's a 12-minute, here's a tip, something you need to know about. So it's all over the place. There's no consistency when it comes to time.
I love that.